Kare-ing.
Hello, everyone.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Caring Conversations. I'm Jordan, your host from Care, with the amazing co-host. I always do this wrong way. Rachel Hill from Foresight.
Hello.
We have like a jam-packed episode today. I'm super excited about all of the things we are doing, and I'm bringing on a dear friend of mine from the Maryland Regional Direct Services Collaborative.
That's a
So
mouthful.
it is a mouthful, and they have a mouthful of research to go over today on a city that is really near and dear to me, my home city of Baltimore, where I still live. And so we're going to get into it, but before we do, let's play it. I never get sick of that.
We're back. I'm ready to roll. I'm feeling super. Feel great today. I'm excited.
So today, who is not feeling so great, we have brought on my very dear friend Meg LaPorte, who is the executive director of the Maryland Direct Services Collaborative. Meg, how are you doing today?
I'm okay. Thank you very much. I love that intro. I have to admit, I hadn't seen it before, and I love it. It makes me
Thank you. And Meg, thanks for joining us. You know, we briefly ran into each other back at Leading Age in Denver, and such a treat to meet you. Jordan introduced us, and it was just great to briefly touch base. And I'm so excited in this episode to learn about the hard work you've been doing in this research over the last 6 months we were talking about before we went live. So yeah, I'm excited to dive in.
awesome.
Meg, thank you for joining us with COVID. I hear you are with us in mind and spirit and half body.
I would say, I have my tissues with me, and I might cough a little bit. I'll put it on mute if I do. So yeah.
It doesn't travel through screens, right? Has the CDC confirmed? I'm sorry.
I don't know.
This is a health industry podcast. We know as much as that. So Meg, you've scoured Baltimore in the past 6 months, talking to all the senior living and aging services professionals to understand what is the workforce crisis that hits Baltimore. And I want you to tell us all about like where you started, who you talked to, what you learned, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And what I want our viewers to take away from is this could be your city. Baltimore is not on Mars. It is a city just like any other. And so what we find from Baltimore may end up being the same issues that are in a lot of our cities. So Meg, go ahead.
Yeah. So thank you. Yeah, I'm so very excited to talk about this work. And I have scoured the city of Baltimore mostly virtually. And so just to start with, I'll give you the whole panoply of folks that the stakeholders in this workforce crisis I've spoken to. First, like you said, I'm with the Maryland Regional Direct Services Collaborative, and we are a collaborative of organizations, individuals and organizations who have a stakeholder interest in direct care and services in the Maryland region. And so through a generous grant from the ABLE Foundation, which is a private foundation headquartered in Baltimore, focused solely for the most part, solely on Baltimore, we got this grant to do work and to investigate how to improve job quality for direct care and services workers in Baltimore, as well as to look at why it is that recruitment and retention are such huge issues in Baltimore. And so I was able to do a series of focus groups, 5 different focus groups with CNAs, personal care assistants, direct support professionals, home health care assistants who live or work around Baltimore. Most of them, I think, worked in Baltimore, and they live and work around Baltimore. And that was truly enlightening. So a lot of the research that's in the report is around what their responses were to a series of questions. I also spoke to other stakeholder groups, such as provider advocacy organization, actual providers, so assisted living providers, SNF providers, home health providers, entities that employ direct support professionals. Those are the individuals who work with people who have intellectual and developmental disabilities, who go with them to their jobs and help support them to get them out into community. And then also I spoke to workforce development initiatives. There are several of them in Baltimore, and all of that. And then did a lot of research. I spoke to national level folks. I spoke to Lori Porter. I spoke to Robin Stone with Leading Age. I spoke to Lori Smetanka with the Consumer Voice. She's with an organization that represents consumers who in assisted living, nursing homes and assisted living, and to a few other folks. And so all of this is sort of compiled into this report and also I can't forget that CARE helped me. So CARE is in Baltimore, and I created a survey. CARE very generously sent their survey to the Baltimore Heroes, and I was able to get survey feedback from that. So all of that has gone into the report and then some. And so just to create this sort of a look or portrait of what's happening in Baltimore. So.
Wow, Meg, you left no stone unturned here.
I tried.
You talked to everybody. So I want to back us up a little bit here. And, obviously you've been in the space for a while, but I want to briefly hear a little bit about kind of the general line of questions that you were asking, because I think that'll certainly be helpful to sort of contextualize what information you were getting back. So this is really fascinating.
Yep. So I asked, do you want to know what questions I asked of the direct care and services workers?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I asked, what was it that brought them to the job? Why did they do that job? Why did they stay? Because all of them, everyone I spoke to actually were still working as CNAs or home health assistants or assisted living assistants. Some of them, by the way, many of them were also GNAs, which is a requirement inside of Maryland. If you work in a nursing home, if you want to be a CNA in a nursing home in the state of Maryland, you have to also have something called a GNA, Gerontological Nurse Assistant. It's an extra exam that you have to pass in order to work in a nursing home. So many of them, anyway, many of them have the GNA as well. Although many of them work just in home health, or they had gone from nursing home to home health, or back and forth, or done work in assisted living. Mm-hmm. And so I would ask them, what is it that brought them to their job? Why did they do the job that they did? What makes them, tick? What is the biggest challenge? They know, I said to them, and there's a workforce problem. What are the biggest challenges? Mm. What would make you leave? If you've considered leaving, why would you want to leave? Mm. And I think probably another one was, what are some of the benefits that you would like to see provided to you to help you want to stay, to help your job, to improve your job quality? Wow. Those were the questions I asked.
Great.
And so Charles always talks about this tale of two perspectives. And so you kind of got into this two perspectives. What was the questions that were asked to the other side of, well, if you imagine them being sides, but the leadership, like what was the questions that were asked of them?
Yeah, so I asked, why do you think there's an issue? Why do you have first of all, is there an issue for you with recruitment and or retention in either your facilities or your agency or your community? Why do you think there is an issue? What do you think happened? And then what are you doing about it? So those are generally the three questions I asked. And what do you think will help resolve it? I also asked them, what do you think would help resolve it? So
I'm sure you got a myriad of answers on that one.
I did. And you probably won't be surprised to hear that for many, they thought that a improvement in the Medicaid reimbursement rates would be a game changer. So that's probably not surprising, because we hear that across the board, across the country, actually, especially for nursing homes, but it's also true for home health agencies that provide care to people who are on Medicaid. So I'm sorry. Yeah. Home health agencies that provide care to people who are on Medicaid, they get reimbursed through Medicaid to pay, and that helps them to pay for their direct care workers too, to help them pay for their staff.
And so kind of playing on this perspectives, like, do our direct care service workers have the same, like, are they advocating for higher reimbursements, or do they even understand that that is a factor in their pay?
So I would say, I'm not sure. I didn't, we didn't, when I spoke to the workforce, to the workers, we didn't talk about Medicaid. We just, what they told me their issues were pay, you need to pay us. We need to make more money. Please pay us more, or pay is a problem. In addition to staffing, we are short on staff. They work short. Most of them talked about how much they work short. What that means is they are working in an environment where they are short staffed. And so therefore they have a lot of patients or residents or clients to care for at once. And this, of course, is what happens in nursing homes and assisted living. It doesn't necessarily happen in home care. It's a different environment, but ratios, we talk about ratios, that's nursing homes and assisted living communities. And so for those folks, they talked about that environment, working short and being exhausted from working short, right? So that was a huge issue that came up a lot. Wow. And I asked them for ratios too, and the ratios were it was interesting. We got that back too. And that was in the same thing with the survey too. I asked them that question too, for those who work in nursing homes, that is, and assisted living. So, but then pay, again, like I said, pay was an issue. A lot of folks talked about, I said, so many people, by the way, have seen raises since the pandemic. And we know this. We know that providers have given in raised pay rates and wages since the pandemic. Yes, that is very true. Many have said that they've seen pay rates. I did speak to some people who said, yes, we got a pay raise, in August, let's say. We got a pay raise recently, a few months ago. It was $3. But you know what? We've been there 5 years, 3 years, whatever it is. And everybody who comes in the door is getting the same rate that we just got. And we've been working here all this time. So that didn't seem fair to them, which I thought was interesting. So,
oh, quick question here in the chat. How do we use technology to support and reduce that burden? That's interesting. Do you guys see that as a resource, Meg? Do you see somehow using technology to aid in this burden? What kind of role do you guys see that playing? I'll start with Meg, and then Jordan, if you want to chime in.
No, I think that's a very good question, actually. I think there are lots of technology. I'm sure that Jordan can answer this one, around scheduling, software scheduling, flexibility. I think there's software out there. There has been that enables people who, individuals to schedule on their own or to do self-scheduling. Flexibility was another issue that came up. So anything that can help in that regard. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll let Jordan talk to the other part of it.
Well, I mean, Meg, you said it. To build on what you said, if there's a lot of software out there to help with scheduling on the community side, and there's flexibility options and self-scheduling options for softwares that help with people having more flexibility. Care is one of them that helps caregivers find more flexibility, with the reality that there aren't that many people, so we kind of just gotta share the workforce. But interestingly enough, I'm curious to hear if you heard any responses about technology.
No, I would say there wasn't
on either side.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there was a lot of discussion about technology. I did hear from, in the focus groups, I do remember a couple of people saying that their payroll their payroll app had screwed up and they didn't get the payroll in time. So that was an issue. Like, they didn't get the correct amount of pay that they were supposed to get. So they had to wait to get them. And that's a huge issue, because seeing it, direct care workers are making they're hovering at or just above or sometimes below what we call is a living wage. So that's living paycheck to paycheck. It's really hard to have to wait on that kind of thing. So they did. So there was a mention of that, like an incident that had happened with a couple of them in that regard. Hopefully that doesn't happen very often, but, but the report the report actually talks a lot about the living wage issue, by the way. So
So
wage.
So I was going to say, we all know pay, huge issue. Clearly, you know, I put our care force right up there with teachers. You know, I was telling you before that offline, my husband's a teacher. So of course, that certainly does not surprise me that is one of the big issues here. But Meg, was there something from doing all of this groundwork, responses that you were surprised by on either side, or something that really stuck with you that you weren't expecting to come out of this research?
That's a good question. I will say from the provider and sort of provider advocate side, as well as others, something that did surprise me was there was a discussion about how CNA work should be a temporary job on its way to something else, like nurse or administrator or something else like that, because it is such a hard job. And I think that's an interesting perspective. I don't necessarily personally agree with it, because I think there are many CNAs who love their job and have been in their job for many years and don't want to go. They don't want to be a nurse necessarily. They don't want to go on to admit. And there are some who do, but they don't want to go on to be administrators, but they want to learn in their job and advance in the way that they can in their jobs. And I think what's also interesting is that it's such an important role in any community, that they are the closest to the resident, to the patient, to the client. That job, I don't think, should be considered a temporary job, like working in a fast food restaurant, for example, or something like that, which again, to me, begs the question, then it should be it should be considered a more professional and at a higher level, which then puts it at a higher level of pay, I think. So
absolutely. And I think it speaks to one of the things that those who are CNAs, it's about heart, right? And a passion for what they're doing. And sure, you know, maybe some do want that opportunity to move up, but a lot of people that go into that specific position, that's exactly what they want to do. So I think this is really interesting dialogue and understanding their headspace of, like, one, why they're doing this, the heart, and really getting to the deeper level and meaning of why our care force does what they do. So that's really interesting.
Yes. I will say, to answer the other part of your question, I did ask some in focus groups why, if they had left their job, or why they didn't leave their job to go to another one that they knew was higher paying in a different place. And some of the answers I got were, well, I know that they have the same mess down the street, so why would I leave? Because it's just, you know, I've been here long enough. I know the people. If I go down the street, it's going to be the same mess. Or I love so much what I'm doing and I don't want to leave my residence, or my patients, that kind of thing. I did hear from home health aides that there was a concern about what I didn't hear. What actually, this was kind of surprising. Some home health aides said, we would wish that we could. Sometimes we get very difficult patients, and sometimes we have to deal with that. And we wish we felt like our agency, our employer, had our backs when it came to dealing with difficult, what they would call difficult patients. So, and another one, I'm sorry, I got one more. And that one is, I think somebody, actually, I forgot it. Go on. Sorry. My COVID brain is like not working well. So forgive me. So.
That's fair. That's fair. Oh, great point, Anna. Real quick, we got a comment from Anna Hall here in the chat. Yeah, I love it. I think of like undercover boss, right? Like, go and spend a day doing that work if you really don't understand it. You know, a lot of, you know, my mom did this work for 20 plus years, and toward the end of her career, you know, had a bad back, had a lot of issues. Like, this is a really physical, laborious job. It's tough.
Yes. Yes. So that is a very good question. And I will tell you, speaking of a day in the life, are you guys familiar with Mike Rowe?
I'm not.
Dirty Jobs.
Dirty Jobs.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, he's pretty. So I've been a huge fan of his for a long time, and he was host of the original Dirty Jobs, and then it became a different kind of show. And I think he's doing Dirty Jobs again. He has a very popular Facebook show. He may or may not be at some point, possibly help. And he's from Baltimore, by the way. In Baltimore. He may or may not be helping and interested in helping with people understand the day in the life of a CNA. I'm just going to plant that there. So.
Oh, that's fascinating. Very cool.
Now, Jordan, I told Jordan this recently, and he said, nobody knows who Mike Rowe is.
Why? Why would you? Okay, yes, I did say that.
And it's possible. Maybe they don't, but.
I think that there's multiple parts to this, and I actually love the comments coming in because they all talk about the different parts of it. And Meg, correct me if I'm wrong, but it comes down to understanding the day in life of a CNA can help them upskill. Because the workforce problem that I think we have is, yes, a headcount issue, but also it is a skill level issue. Like you're putting someone in a box of what they can and cannot do. So you need to bring in other people to do other things. But if we as an industry work together to allow our CNAs, our med techs, our care force to broaden their skills and learn more things so that they can have a larger effect in care, then we can actually not have a workforce problem. And it takes all parts. It takes understanding what you can and cannot do, what we need to teach, but then also a technology of how can we help and assist in other things, so that we can train our CNAs to do. It's not like replacing the cashier in a grocery store. It's replacing the cashier so that they can go and stock milk, and so that you can do this, and you can also help behind the counter, doing all these other things. That is it. So I saw the tech stuff, and it's like that's definitely a piece of it. There's a really big piece of it, but also I don't want to care everything all the time, but having a flexible workforce that can move from place to place, because there is the same mess down the road. And if you can understand how to get your mess manageable here, then you can go over here, and then you can go here and help.
Frederick, great question. We're going to get to that in just a few here. We'll get you all the details on where this research is living and where you can access that. So thank you.
Yeah, Meg, one more thing before we get into when you're publishing and where they can go. What was the best thing that you learned about our workforce and about our care force?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's just that they are incredibly committed and love working with people, and they love what they're doing. It's a passion for many of the folks. It really is. Yeah, I think that it's heartening to hear that. And I think there are lots of people who, if they don't know what kind of, I think that lots of people need to know more about what an enriching job it can be. And Lori Porter talks about this a lot, about how powerful that job is. Like she talks about when she was a CNA and she was problematic as a CNA, but then at some point realized that she had such power to make somebody's day so special. And I think that very much translated in my research, especially with when I interviewed direct care professionals in my focus groups. So.
I love that, Megan. I love that we're shining a light on that aspect of the career. I think, we always love talking about this, this job, this space senior living is people-centered, right? Or person-centered care. And, I think that often just kind of gets thrown out there. But I love that this is really focusing on that and highlighting that, this, like, shining a light on that why people do what they do, why our care force does what they do. I think that's so special. So that's amazing. I know just a few years, we're kind of coming up on time. Frederick had asked in the chat, where is this information going to be living? When's it published?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for doing this incredible work. This is amazing and so valuable. Clearly, this is something our audience wants to get their hands on. So Meg, if you could share a little bit about that, please.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to be, I think it'll be published. It should be on our website by next Thursday.
Mark your calendars.
And we are going to have a launch event next Friday at noon Eastern. So, and I think I put the chat. I think someone's going to put the link to
the link to the event will be in the comments, so that you can go and click on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and our website is called, it's Maryland Direct Services Collaborative.org. That's the name of the website. Again, a mouthful, but Maryland Direct Services Collaborative.org.
Jade, our producer, let's leave that up there a minute. Let's let everybody take that in. And we can also drop that in the comments as well. So
thank you.
And if you aren't a Maryland resident, or you are a caregiver, or you are in leadership and you're just like, well, I don't live in Baltimore, so it's not really my problem. If you really get down to what the research says, it's similar in other cities too. I mean, Meg, you've had a long career in the space. Do you find that any of this was like Baltimore specific?
I don't think it is Baltimore specific. I mean, some of it. So what's specific to Baltimore, and probably a lot of cities across the country, is the fact that the workforce in Baltimore is made up primarily of women of color, right? Most of them are African American, and that might be it's different in other parts of the country, but it's still about the people, right? And I think that there are dynamics. There obviously are dynamics with regard to race, et cetera, that are going to happen in in places where the workforce is primarily made up of people of color. Those are dynamics that need to be considered as well when it comes to Baltimore or other cities like that. So.
Absolutely. But I agree with Jordan, don't by any means think this is like an isolated thing here in one side, like the overall, takeaways from your research, Meg, this is certainly not isolated. This is a crisis. You're hearing about it everywhere in our industry, that, people can't either get staff or retain their staff. And, this is what Jordan and I are here to do, have these conversations about how to make it better. And, yes, care, I think, plays an integral role in that and is huge resource, but we're also here to just give you tangible takeaways. And a lot of it is just listening. Honestly, I think out of all the conversations we've had, it's listening to the care force. That is really, one, how you recruit better, two, how you retain better, because you're understanding your team better. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to simplify it. None of this is easy, but I think that is really at the heart of it and at the crux of it, what it comes down to.
Listening is important, and putting action behind what you hear is the thing that makes listening, not just hearing. You just hear what they have to say. Well, a lot of people feel like, someone that never feel like someone's listening because nothing ever happens from what you heard me say. So putting action behind that and creating a culture of not just resident-centered care, but also your staff-centered. I mean, having a resident-centered culture is important, but also having a staff-centered culture is important. And so with that, Meg, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm so excited for some of the things we're coming up to talk about. I've seen this wonderful conversation about tech in the comments, so we will be having an episode coming up soon to kind of address some of the things that we're talking about today. And then also, so next week we have an awesome guest coming on talking about how he figured out how to pay his care force more. So that is interesting. Stay tuned to that. That is some pretty cool stuff. And as always, we're here every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday.
At what time? 2?
Yep, 2 ET. We are here. We are streaming live. We are on the Foresight LinkedIn page. And we also would highly encourage you. We have a YouTube playlist of all of our past conversations living on the Foresight YouTube page. So you can catch up on everything we've been talking about. These conversations have been amazing. You guys were talking about Lori Porter. We have had her on. We just had Nate Hum on from the Sika Foundation. I mean, we're doing some really cool stuff over here, and just publicly giving Jordan some props. He facilitates these amazing conversations for us, and I am so thrilled that he opens these doors for me, and that I can just sort of at times just be a fly on the wall and continue to hear what's going on in our space, in the industry. And I'm learning right along with the rest of you, and I just thoroughly enjoy it, and I'm so thrilled to be a part of the conversation. So yes, we will be back next Wednesday with another episode. Thank you for joining us, and I'm so glad you found this useful. Ravi, join us next week. And guys, we'll see you on the next one. Bye. Thanks.